Hello everyone, thank you for watching Kedah Education at Home, brought to you by JPN Kedah. I'm Mr. Mah from Sektor Pengurusan Sekolah JPN Kedah, and today I'll be sharing with you on Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah for Primary School Level 2 English Language. First of all, I would like to thank Sektor Pengajaran and SSDP Kedah for giving me this opportunity to do this sharing session with you. Let's begin. Now, when Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah was introduced in Malaysia, many teachers actually welcome it with open arms, as it actually helps us to move away from the exam-oriented education system. Besides, it is also a more holistic approach for us to assess our pupils' level and also to promote learning. However, at the same time, there seemed to be a group of teachers who are slightly stressed out about it. Well, they think that this PBD is actually quite complicated and there is so much paperwork to do. Well, some of them have these questions like, well, do I have to keep track of all the performance of my pupils in every single lesson? And how do I do it in a large multi-level classrooms? And it's PKP now, I don't see my pupils. How do I do them? Well, fret not. That is why SSDP has brought to you this series on PBD, so make sure you follow them this week. Now, first of all, let us understand why PBD is actually introduced in Malaysia. According to the Panduan Pelaksanaan Pentaksiran Bilik Darjah, edisi kedua 2019, by the Ministry of Education, it clearly outlines the objectives of why PBD is carried out. Well, for me personally, it takes away the overemphasis on the exam system in our country, and it actually helps us to gauge pupils' learning progress and to help them determine the way forward. Well, at the same time, it is also a feedback to teachers about the effectiveness of our teaching and learning process. Okay, for PBD, there is actually formative and summative assessment. What is formative assessment? Formative assessment is an ongoing process, okay, for us teachers to assess pupils during the lesson. Its purpose is for us to help pupils to develop, to help them to improve. So that is called the assessment for learning. Under formative assessment, we do have self-assessment and peer assessment. For self and peer assessment, pupils are actually taking charge of their own learning. The responsibility for assessment is no longer at the teacher, all right, but it's on themselves, okay? So that is considered assessment as learning. What about tests and exams? Okay, they are usually carried out at the end of a topic or at the end of a semester, and that is assessment of learning. That is to evaluate how much the pupils have learned. So for PBD, it includes both formative and summative assessment. Okay, according to the guide, there are 9 characteristics of PBD. First, it's planned by the teacher. Okay, it means that we assess our own pupils. All right, it is systematic. We have to plan it, record it, analyze it, carry out intervention, and at the end, we have to report to the parents. It includes both formative and summative assessment. And there are 3 main ways for us to assess pupils. Okay, we can do it through observation, oral, as well as written. And PBD is actually criterion-based. In other words, we have to refer to the learning standards and content standards in the DSKP. And it stresses on individual development rather than competition. PBD helps us to track our learners as a holistic learner, and teachers are able to carry out intervention after that. May it be consolidation, enrichment, or also remedial. And finally, it encourages self and peer assessment so that pupils will take responsibility of their own learning. Now, there are 3 major ways of assessment, okay, which includes observation, oral, and written. Okay? Now, for observation, we can do it during the lesson, or when pupils are completing their task, or when they interact with the stimulus. For oral, we can do it through question and answer session. Okay? It can be the pupil's oral presentation, drama, role play, storytelling, singing, or even poetry recitation. For written, we can do it through homework, reports, project work, essay writing, quizzes, and also tests. Now, one key concept that I have to stress on PBD is that the professional judgment by the teacher. Okay, apart from collecting evidence, we teachers have to do this professional judgment as well. Now, how do we do it fairly? First of all, we have to have a sound grasp of our subject knowledge. Now, subject knowledge means our content. We understand, we know the content, we know our pedagogy, and we also know the way we want to assess our pupils. Secondly, we need to act responsibly. Okay, it is our we need to be professionally responsible and ethical when we carry out PBD. Thirdly, we need to consider all forms of input by our pupils. It can be their performance during the lessons, it can be their work, and so on. And finally, one important crucial aspect is our experience. Okay? Now, when we interact with our pupils, we know them. We know what they can do and what they can't do. Apart from this, there are also other considerations that we need to have in our minds, okay? That is number one, curriculum aspiration. In other words, what our DSKP aspires to achieve. Okay, we also need to know why we are assessing our pupils, how we are doing that, and also the atmosphere during assessment. In contrast to the tense atmosphere in an exam hall, PBD is usually carried out in a fun and relaxed atmosphere. Teachers need to be trustworthy, we need to be fair, and also, finally, opportunities. We need to make sure that there are enough opportunities for our pupils to improve. Also, our assessment has enough opportunities for pupils to showcase their different abilities. Okay, after we have, I've shared with you some fundamentals of PBD, now let's see how I'm putting it into practice. Okay. The lesson that I'm doing is Year 5, World of Knowledge. Okay, the topic is Town and Cities. The main skill focus is reading. Please refer to the English Plus 1 textbook, Unit 1, page 19. And for the CFR aligned curriculum, we have to follow the scheme of work, all right, prepared by BPK. So if you are teaching in an SK, please refer to Lesson 25, Reading 5. And if you are teaching in an SJ case, whether it's C or T, please refer to Lesson 14, Reading 2. Now, these are the documents that I've used: the teacher's book, the pupil's book, Panduan Pelaksanaan PBD, the DSKP, and also the scheme of work. Now, if we refer to the scheme of work, we can see that BPK has actually outlined, okay, the main content and learning standards, the main and the complementary content and learning standards. So these are the things that we have to follow. However, for the lesson delivery, we are open to make some adaptations. Okay, for this lesson, my main content standard would be 3.2, understand a variety of linear and non-linear print and digital text by using appropriate reading strategies. For my complementary content standard is actually writing. 4.3, communicate with appropriate language form and style for a range of purposes in print and digital media. For my learning standard, the main learning standard is 3.2.2, understand specific information and details of 2 paragraphs or more. And for my complementary learning standard, it's actually 4.3.3, spell a range of high-frequency words accurately in independent writing. Now, so from the learning standards, I derive my lesson objectives. So by the end of this lesson, pupils should be able to answer at least 5 comprehension questions correctly based on the text read, and spell at least 3 words. Okay, they are nouns, places in town, and dictate at least 2 simple sentences correctly. And that is derived from my complementary learning standard. Okay, I will talk you through the teaching activities that I did. Okay, I actually did an online meeting with my students, all right, my pupils, and this is what I did. Now, for pre-lesson, I showed them some images and invite them to say what the images are and what they do there. And after that, I teach them the meaning of words, okay, the places in town. After that, the pupils have to read a description about Edinburgh. That is in page 19, okay, on page 19 of our English Plus One. After they have read that, okay, I will ask questions, all right, we will talk about it and pupils respond. And after that, I introduce the phrases containing the adverbs really, very, quite, plus adjective, plus noun, and invite pupils to give examples. Now, I have to do that because that is the language focus of this lesson. Okay, after that, I sent a link in my WhatsApp group for the pupils to complete a Google form. Okay, and finally, I sent them a short audio clip, okay, for them to do dictation. Now, for post-lesson, meaning after all this, the pupils do an internet research to look for some specific information about a town they like with some guiding questions, and they have to present it in a circle map. Now, why am I doing that? This lesson is actually a lead up to a writing session in the future. Okay? Now, of course, this is done online because we don't see the pupils. What if the pupils do not have internet access? What if they couldn't go on Zoom or Google Meet? So what we can do is actually to record it and share the link with them or help them download. Or if they couldn't do the Google form, all right, so we just print it out, put it in the guardhouse, ask the parents to come and collect. Okay? So whatever ways that we are doing, whether it's online or offline, what is most important is that the pupils are learning. Okay? Now, where do I do my assessment? Okay, here. When I interact with the pupils, when I was doing the oral, the question and answer session, I can actually observe their behavior. I can see what they're doing. I can see their response. Okay? From my Google form, I can actually see if they are able to answer the questions correctly, whether they are able to identify the specific information or details. I can also see if they can spell words, okay? And also during the dictation, I can actually see if they are able to spell words correctly in independent writing. Okay, and why am I giving them this post-lesson task? Like I said just now, it's actually a lead up to a writing lesson. And at the same time, it also gives me extra evidence for me to assess them, okay? Right. Now, just to show you, these are the things that I've used. Okay, I refer to the textbook. Okay, I show them a PowerPoint slide on pictures of different places. Okay, that's a map of Scotland and Edinburgh. Okay, I used Zoom. Okay, you can use Google Meet or Microsoft Teams. Any methods or any means that you are comfortable with. Okay. After that, I gave them a Google form to fill up. I also interacted with them through WhatsApp. Okay, so when I was doing the online session, I can actually start to observe them. I can see their behavior. I can also ask them, okay, a true or false question, which they can respond by just holding their fingers up, thumbs up, or true or false. Okay, things like this. I can ask them questions. I can see their expressions. Okay, if they cannot show me their face or they cannot turn on their screen, what do? I interact with them on the chat box. Okay, I ask questions, they have to type out the answers. Okay, from there, I can actually check if they are able to spell words correctly. And I print screen them, okay, so I can keep this as an evidence. Okay, now these are the questions that I've asked in my Google form. Okay, I have a variety of questions. Okay, mostly it is about the specific information and details in the text. Okay, I've asked true, false questions, multiple option, multiple choice items, structured, and also open-ended. Okay, they mainly test on the understanding, all right, to check if they can have understood the specific information and details. All right, I also have items on spelling, and also I have some open-ended items where I can see their response. Okay, I can see if they are able to understand it and if they are able to respond creatively. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is when we are doing our task, make sure we do proper planning so that we can carry out a fair assessment. Okay, now this is actually the Google form that the Excel spreadsheet that I get from my pupils' response. So from there, I can actually see how my pupils have done. Okay, so I color-coded them. Okay, blue means I take that as the correct answer. Red means they got it not they got it wrong. And those which I put in yellow is actually, for me, I can guide them for them to improve. The idea is there, but it is not very clear. Okay, so this is how I get the evidence from their written work. Okay, now, so when I want to assess, I have to refer to the learning standard, which is 3.2.2, understand specific information and details of 2 paragraphs or more. Okay, from there, I have to refer to this descriptor for reading skills. This is the overall descriptor from performance level 1 to performance level 6. And from there, I have to select the descriptor which suit my learning standard. So here it should be this. The first one can display minimal understanding of the main idea, specific information and details of simple text or 2 paragraphs or more with a lot of support. Now this is if the pupil is at performance level 1. So I take them out and this is it. Okay, these are the descriptors for my learning standard. So when I want to assess them, I refer to this. Okay, now we can note the differences in between levels. All right, it can be in terms of that level of understanding. Is it minimal? Is it some understanding, or can they understand? It can be in terms of support. How much support do I need to give the pupil? Okay, it can also be in terms of the response that you get. Did they respond adequately? Is it clearly or is it creatively? And also, finally, the amount of time needed for the pupils to complete the task. Okay, so we can take in these 4 considerations when we are placing them the levels. Okay, then do we need to have each task for each level? The answer is actually no. As long as we give them a task, and from the task, from their response, we determine which level they belong to. Okay, so in other words, when we are setting our assessment tasks, we have to make sure they can actually assess the different levels of the pupils. So for my example just now, my Google form just now, if I had only given them multiple choice items, would I be able to see whether they can respond creatively? In other words, did my task allow the pupils to achieve the descriptors for level 6? So that is something that we really have to think about, and that is why I had some open-ended items. Okay, this is a sample of my pupils' response. Okay, I've taken it up from the Google form. As we can see, out of 15 items, the student has actually scored 14 out of 15. Okay, so for me, he can actually understand the specific information and details. And from the open-ended items, I can see that he was able to respond creatively. Okay, so even though, note that there is actually grammatical errors in the open-ended item. Okay, but hey, remember, this is a reading assessment. He was able to read and understand and respond. So I will not penalize him on his grammatical items or errors. Okay, because that is unfair. That should fall under writing instead of reading. Okay. So for me, this student is the level of performance for this student is actually a 5 or a 6. Okay. Now, this is another response. Okay, from here, I can actually see that the pupil was able to understand, okay, the specific information and details of simple texts. All right. However, the last few items, which are the open-ended items, he wasn't really able to do so. Having said that, he can actually understand it quite well. So for me, it's actually a PL4 or 5. It's only that he couldn't get a 6 because he was not able to respond creatively. Okay? All right, this is the third sample. As you can see, the student got most of the items on specific information and details wrong. So I can actually infer that he, wasn't able to understand the text quite well. Okay, however, he did not display minimal understanding because actually he was able to respond to the open-ended items. Okay, so there is some understanding. It's just that for specific details and information, he wasn't able to do. And because I don't see him, so I'm not quite sure what happened. So maybe I will do a follow-up with him. But looking at this, it's actually a PL2 for me. Okay, now it is interesting to get some, responses. For question 13 in my Google form, I actually asked them, now, why do you think there are monuments in Edinburgh? Okay, and these are some of the responses that I've gotten from my pupils. And from my experience with them, okay, actually, I more or less can guess that, I'm not very sure whether it was their own work. Did they get help from their parents or did they do a Google search? Okay, but does it matter? Should I be angry at them? No, I don't think so. Okay, because for me, this is actually an opportunity for them to learn more. At least they are taking the initiative to go and look for the answers. And it also reflects that this task is not too threatening. Because they could have just left it blank or, they were willing to try to answer. So from there, sometimes we do not just see, what they write on the paper. Our experience will tell us, the process of how they got there. Okay, so that is why teachers' experience is also important in our professional judgment. Okay, so after I've done that, all right, I will record them in this progress record. I have a progress record for different skills. Okay, so mind you, this is just an example. Okay, it's just an example. You can do it at different ways. You can use a name list. You can do other ways of recording. Okay, so if I think they have achieved the level 2 on the 17th of February, so I write my date there, and I will give this student a bit more guidance, okay, so that perhaps in a future date I can assess him, and if he can manage to get a better level, then he will get a better level. So this is what I mean by opportunities. We have to give them different, we have to let them try to achieve for a better result, okay? And for writing, okay, I was looking at 4.3.2, which is spell a range of high-frequency words accurately in independent writing. Okay, and this is the overall descriptors for writing skills. All right, and I highlight the areas which links to my learning standard, which is spelling. And this is what I get. For level 1 is actually display minimal ability to spell words. Level 2 is can spell words. And level 3 to 6 is actually can spell words accurately. Okay, so let's look at a sample. Now, this is one of the pupils' answer. Okay, he managed to get everything correct. Okay, now the question is, how do I determine? Because if he can spell accurately, it's level 3 to 6. How do I determine which level he is in? Okay, so number 1, we can look at other pieces of writing. But for this piece of writing, he is definitely one of the higher ones. Okay, and it depends on our professional judgment. Okay. Look at this piece of writing. Wow. Sometimes when we look at the handwriting of the pupils, we tend to be carried away. We might have a negative impression on the pupil. But teacher, let me remind you that actually we are assessing their spelling skills. The learning standard is about can spell high frequency words. So in this case, the pupil actually is able to spell all the words correctly. Okay? So sometimes we have to be very careful. We have to be professional. Leave our emotions aside, and we have to know whether it's actually the pupil's attitude or the pupil's ability. All right, let's look at these two pieces of writing. Now, the first piece, okay, this pupil committed one error, the spelling of interesting. The second piece, the pupil left out an article and also he spelled the word quite, all right, as quiet. So there are two errors there. Now, does this mean the second piece deserves a lower performance level than the first piece? No, I don't think so. Okay? Because actually both of them have just committed one spelling error. Alright? Like I said, this learning standard is on spelling, so we look at that. Alright? So if you think you do not have enough evidence, then maybe look at other pieces of work, look at the interaction, the response. Okay? Right. What about this? If I really, mark this piece of work, this student actually gets 0 out of 5 because every sentence has a mistake. Now, does that mean that I will put this student as, a PL1 or PL2 pupil? Actually, no. Because for this task, the pupil has managed to, spell 3 words wrongly. But other than that, is the issue of punctuation. Okay. Now, punctuation is under a different learning standard. Therefore, for this piece of work, of course, definitely is not, the same as the previous pieces of work, maybe lower, but we do not penalize him on punctuation. Okay. What we can do is to guide them and make them make some corrections. Okay. Right. So how do we record pupils' progress? We can do it in the form of progress record, checklist, record book, anecdotes, notes, video recording, audio clips, screenshots, photos, or project work. Okay, and this is an example of the progress record. So for each learning standard, I have from level 1 to 6, the column for level 1 to 6, the performance level, so that I can just take or put a date there. Okay, and every year we have to report it into the template pelaporan PBD, okay, twice a year. So this is given by BPK. All right, and how do I do it? So first, I look at my progress report. For each learning standard that my pupils have achieved, I take the highest one, okay? After that, do I add it, do I add all the figures and get the average? No, I don't do that, okay? What I need to do is to refer to the overall descriptors and see which level best describe the pupils, okay? So I do not add them all out and get the average. No, I have to use my professional judgment based on this progress report and also other evidences, okay? So, to sum up, PBD is actually part and parcel of our daily teaching process, okay? It is there to help us to promote pupils' learning, making them responsible for their own learning. Pupils tend to think that, marking is the teacher's job, nothing to do with me. No, actually, we want to make them aware of their own learning progress. And PBD helps us to do that, okay? Teachers need to have planned opportunities, okay? We need to plan for opportunities for assessments. And it requires teachers' professional judgment, okay? And PBD is criterion-based and evidence-based, okay? We need to refer to the criteria, which is our DSKP, and we need to refer to the evidence. It's not a one-off thing that we do, impromptu, in an impromptu manner. No, we have to collect evidence, we have to think clearly, we have to be fair to the pupils, okay? So it is criterion-based and evidence-based and not affected by our emotions. Okay, finally, before I end, okay, remember, why is PBD carried out? Because we want a fair assessment for every pupil. Not all pupil progresses at the same pace, and that is why we have pentaksiran bilik darjah. We want to be fair to them. We want to help them learn. The key word is to promote learning. Okay? So teachers, if you have any issues or questions about the CFR aligned curriculum, you can refer to this teacher guide, okay, which is implementing the CFR aligned curriculum, planning and managing learning, second edition by the Ministry of Education. Okay? So that's all from me. Stay safe, guys, and I hope you will continue watching the other sessions prepared, brought to you by SSTP and also Sektor Pembelajaran JPN Kedah. So till then, take care, stay safe, and see you again. So, para penonton yang dikasihi, sila isikan maklum balas program di pautan ini seperti yang tertera di skrin anda. Thanks for watching, bye.